especially at a young age. I believe this is number 4, so we can turn this down just a hair. You know, God delivered me from drugs and alcohol. I was 9 years old when God delivered me. Not delivered me at 9, I was 19, but at 9 years old, Mom and Dad got a divorce, and I said, if they can't make it, neither can I. So at that point, I started to live my life on my own. I said, nobody will tell me what to do. Mom and Dad got a divorce. They said, who do you want to live with? I said, well, I don't know. I'm 9. Who should I live with? I want to live with both of you. They said, you can only pick one. And it tore my heart. And at that point, I said, I guess I'll go with Dad, because Mom was not going to be able to control me. I was going to be out of control. And I did not even know this. By the time I was 12 years old, I was drinking a 12-pack of beer per day, smoking weed. By the time I was 13 years old, I was driving my own car around, thought I was doing something. By the time I was 14, I was on hard cocaine, as hard as you could get. By the time I was 15, I had flipped a vehicle. I was kicked out of my house and said, don't ever come back. You're not my kid. 15 years old on the streets. That's where I was. I'm 34 today. At 16 years old, I found myself in the Jamaican Connection, doing some really horrible stuff. By the time I was 17, I was so fixing to die, it was not even funny. I was probably about 95 pounds. I'm 195 pounds. I was 95 pounds, and I was smoking crack cocaine, because it went from meth to crack. And it got bad, really bad. Time at 17, I turned 18 in a facility, and they said, you'll never amount to nothing. You're always going to be nothing. You'll never be anything in life. My dad looked at me and said, I love you, but you're a nobody. You're a nothing. And that's what you're going to stay all the days of your life. See, I was a Mephibosheth in the Bible. I had a lame fall. Mephibosheth in the Bible had lame feet. Every time he'd go to walk, he'd fall, because he was dropped when he was young. And he was Jonathan's son. Jonathan was Saul's son. And yet David was the king of Israel. And David showed kindness to Mephibosheth. David is the type and shadow of Jesus Christ. David said, I wonder if I can show kindness to somebody in Israel. And yet go get Mephibosheth. And so when he did, Mephibosheth represents you and I. Because we were messed up. We had a lame fall. We couldn't even walk. We couldn't get it right. And so David showed kindness to Mephibosheth. And today I stand here to tell you that at 19 years of age, actually at 18, someone handed me a Bible and said, you need to read this. I said, if this will change my life, I'll read it. And so I was open to anything. And at that point in my life, I decided I was going to give God a chance. God says, you're not giving me a chance. I'm stepping into your life. And when God stepped into my life, everything changed. Everything. At that point, I gave my life to God. I said, God, from this day forward, you got everything about me. And so when I did that, God had full control over my life. At 19 years of age, I got out and started to wander the street again. But this time, I was in search for a lady. For my wife. And I said, if God's going to change my life, I need a good, godly woman. And guess who I bumped into? I bumped into Cindy Gullidge, who is now today Cindy Barnes. And met her going down the road. And I said, pull over. She pulled over. She was crazy. She was a church girl. I wasn't. I wasn't even raised in church. And God said, I've got a destiny prepared for you. I have got something great and mighty. And you know what? I could not see it. And yet Cindy saw everything. She goes, there's something different about this guy. I don't know what it is, but his heart is soft to God. And it was. Because the whole time I lived, I had a hard heart. And God broke my heart. So when you're down to nothing, God's up to something. Amen? And God was up to something great in my life. And in Cindy's life as well. And today, you know, we've been to Israel. At 22 years of age, I flew to Israel. And I asked God, Lord, I want to go where you've walked. I want to be in that tomb where they said, for he is not here, for he is risen. I want to be right there to know that you are alive and well. And God says, fly high, son, fly high. And so I did. On eagle's wings, on the airplane, I flew to Israel. I was the youngest guy there. My best friend was 70 years old, pastor of a church. He said, Jim, what are you doing? You do this when you're retired. You don't do it at 22. Most kids your age don't come on a trip like this. I said, you don't know what God's destined me for. I know there's something great God's got in my life, and I don't even know what it is. So there was a process from 22 to 30 I had to go through for ministry. It was unbelievable. But you know, I say all that to say this today, that God is helping us, amen, to see people's hearts and lives changed for His glory, amen. We've got to decrease in order that He increases in our life. God gave me a wonderful dream, amen, about the captives coming in. And He said, oh, that the salvation of Israel will come out of Zion. When the Lord bringeth back the captivity of His people, Jacob will rejoice and Israel shall be glad. And what that means is that the salvation of Israel is God's people. Israel is God's people. We are God's people. Come out of Zion. What's Zion? Well, Zion is the church. Oh, that the salvation of Israel will come out of the church. When the Lord bringeth back the captivity of His people. Well, why is His people in captivity? Because we made dumb mistakes, poor choices in life. So we find ourselves in captivity. God says, I'm ready to go snatch that person out of captivity. And that's what God does. He brings us back to where He wants us to be and restores a right relationship with Him. And when He does that, He loads us down with the fortunes of Jacob. That's what it talks about. Oh, that the salvation of Israel will come out of Zion. When the Lord bringeth back the captivity of His people, Jacob would rejoice. Rejoice, Jacob. And Israel would... Jacob, which is my life. Jacob, before he knew God, was a deceiver, was cunning, was crafty. He'd do anything to get the blessings of God. But God finally looked at him and said, you know what? Today your name has changed. Because he had an experience with God at Bethel. And at that time and at that moment, Jacob said, I'm going to not let you go. And he wrestled with an angel of God between 3 and 6 o'clock in the morning. And the angel said, you've got to let me go. Jacob said, I will not let you go until you bless me. And that's what's happened with our lives. It's pretty much like saying, we're not letting you go, God, until you bless us. We need your hand. We need your hope. We need your help. And we can't let you go. And it's like the angel of the Lord, which represents Jesus, says, Jacob said, what's your name? And the angel said, it don't matter what my name is. What's your name? And the angel asked Jacob, what's your name? Jacob goes, Jacob. No, your name is no longer Jacob, but it is Israel, a prince with God. And that's what happens when God steps into your life. Everything changes. And I can't explain it. Lisa and I went to school together. Amen. And she would probably tell you that my life was not as... Because in high school, you know, I was doing really bad things, you know. And yet she was on her way and going to college and doing her thing. And I was just trying to make it in life. See, I had a death sentence. The enemy wanted to take me out. But God said, I've come to give you life and to give it to you more abundantly. Amen. And I thank God for that. And I didn't know even why I got into all that today. I guess because of Angela's story, it kind of made me talk about my story. But I'm really called to talk about His story today. That's the message, about being blessed to speak His story. Amen. God's story. And we're doing our last series. Amen. This is blessed. And our last message is blessed to share or to tell God's story. I just want you to see one thing quickly, and I'm going to come and preach to you very quickly about sharing